Hello everyone, today's objectives is quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is a formula that provides the solution to any quadratic equation. It does not require factoring or graphing to solve. So there's the quadratic formula and we're going to fill in our blanks. So quadratic formula is the solutions of quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Remember, one side has to equal to 0, and a is before x squared, b is before x, and c has no x, where a does not equal to 0. If a equal to 0, x squared term will not exist, so there will not be a quadratic formula. Where a equals 0 are given by the following formula. So there is the formula, x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing over 2a. So please make sure the square root line is long enough to cover the c. Please make sure the division sign is long enough to cover the 2a. Then going on to the next one, given the equation, you have y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. There's also a very neat thing that happens also. It's called the discriminant. So here's the discriminant. Discriminant is d equals b squared minus 4ac. That d right here, if you look at closely, is really the same as everything that's underneath the square root. They are exactly the same thing. So please keep in mind on that right here. Now what we're going to talk about is the discriminant d equals b squared minus 4ac, and that tells the types of roots. Roots means x-intercept, the equation have. So if you want to write that down, the roots is the x-intercept. So now, discriminant is not where it is. Discriminant tells you how many you have. There's a difference, okay? X-intercept is the location where those points are, but discriminant tells how many those locations. So if discriminant, which is the part underneath the square root, if it's smaller than 0, all right? If it's smaller than 0, that means the parabola, the happy face right here, is actually out, not touching the line, does not touch the x-axis. I say it like my rice bowl is out of space. It's not touching anything. All right. Now, the next one, when d equal to 0, which is right here, the second type, that's the first type out of space. There's my second type. It's equal to. Now, what does equal to? If you remember, it's like a tulip coming out the dirt. So you only get one place that touches, one place right here. That is one real root. Then there's two distinct real roots. Two distinct real roots. That means it crossed x-axis at two places. So those are like the dimples. I like to say, hey, is the dimples on your both sides of your cheeks? So you get 2 right here. That's the third kind. So when the d is bigger than 0, you get 2 dimples. And if you get d equals 0, you get a tulip shape. If you get d less than 0, it's going to be in outer space. Now I want you guys to think about this, okay? That means if this is smaller than 0, that's actually a negative sign. Well, maybe some of you guys already know that imaginary numbers, like I, okay? That's negative. And we say there's no real numbers before and we don't handle it for the longest time. And when d equals 0, now when d equals 0 right here, that means this guy right here is a 0. And if that guy is a 0 right here, this drops out. You only have the negative b over 2a. That's where it comes from. And then the next one is when d is greater than 0. If d is greater than 0, that means you have a number in here. Actually, there's have 2 categories on that, but we're only going to worry about if it's positive, okay? And then so right now, if it's a positive, you know there's going to be a plus or minus number. So that's why it gives you 2 numbers there. And that's the reason we look under b squared minus 4ac is your discriminant. Tells you how many answers you're going to get. So now moving on to problems. 1. Example number 1 says, use a given function to answer the following. So there's your quadratic equation again. Y of x is going to be 0. So that's why they can write it that way. Or sometimes you will see 0 equals 5x squared minus 11x plus 2. Or the other way around, you can put the 0 on the right hand side. So now when they say graphing using technology, how many solutions you will get, So go ahead, punch the y equals 5x squared minus 11x plus 2 into your calculator using the y equal button. Using technology to graph it, when you graph it, you should have two answers. And if you cannot see the answers, please make sure you use Zoom Standard. And when you look at Zoom Standard, it should bring you the graph into the center into about a 10 by 10 table, a 10 by 10 graph. So then you can see the whole thing. Try that. All right, the next one says find the discriminant. And then when you find the discriminant, the formula you have to use is b squared minus 4ac. Before we do that, let's take a look. Your answer for a is equal to 5. Your b is equal to negative 11. And your c is equal to 2. And so if you're going to use the b squared minus 4ac, please make sure you write down negative 11 squared in parentheses, negative 11 in parentheses square, minus 4 times a, which is 5, c, which is 2, and work out your answer. The discriminant I figured out is 81. So discriminant is bigger than 0, and therefore the next question asks, C, does the discriminant value match the number of solution? And in this case, it will be a yes, because if you look at the chart above it, the discriminant is bigger than 0, and because it is bigger than 0, it has two distinct real roots right there. All right, so that means this problem is going to get a dimple graph, and when you look at the graph, that's going to be the case. So now what we're going to do is we are going to use a quadratic formula to double check what kind of number we're going to get. So here's using the quadratic formula. And quadratic formula goes negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Please work through the numbers and check back with mine. So letter D, when they say quadratic formula, this is the answer I have. So first of all, I plug into my equation right there. Then there's the numbers. Notice I put them in parentheses on all of them, so I don't screw up on my sign. Then order of operation tells me negative 11 squared in parentheses is 121. And if you multiply everything else in the back, is 40. And when you take 121 minus 40, is actually 81. Now 81 square root 81 actually is a number. That's going to be 9. So don't forget, we're taking the plus or minus, split them up into 1 plus 1 minus to work them out, because they are not just exactly the same number. So over here is 11 plus 9 gives you 10, and that gives you 11 plus 9 is 20. 20 divided by 10 is 2. But if you look at the other one, it's 11 minus 9, because 1 is plus, 1 is minus. And then 11 minus 9 is 2. 2 over 10 is 1 over 5. So that is how you handle a quadratic formula. Please try to answer example 2 and 3, and we'll check back with the answers. So let's take a look at example number 2. Example number 2, when they say graphing using technology, how many solution? If you type in x squared minus 4x plus 4, you will see there's only one intercept on your graph. And then next one, you can find your a, b, and c from your equation and plug into your discriminant. And the discriminant formula again is b squared minus 4ac, and that will give you 0. And then once you know it's 0, it's definitely one x-intercept, so therefore it matches. And then when you go through the quadratic formula, I plug in everything right here. Negative b is negative 4, so I put down negative parentheses negative 4. Right here I do negative 4 in parentheses square. And when you work it out, therefore it's 4 plus or minus 16 minus 16, which is going to be 0 right here. And because it's 0, it's really, you don't even need this part. You only have to do 1, because 0 is going to be the same answer for any of them. And then after that, 4 over 2 is going to be simplified into 2. And 2 is going to be your answer for the x-intercept. It's going to be at 2, 0, all right? Then the next one, example number 3, going on to the same thing. So the equation is x squared plus 5. Because it's x squared plus 5, if you punch it in, there will be no x-intercept. And when you plug in the numbers for A, B, and C right here, and you work it out, you'll actually get a negative 20. And because it's a negative 20, it's going to be the parabola out in the space. And does not cross the x-intercept. So therefore, that's why I said no x-intercept. But there's a parabola. All right. So does discriminant value matches the number of solution? Yes, because negative discriminant will give you no x-intercept. So therefore, it all matches. And that concludes the notes for 5.7.